2 of Late Night Health continues. I'm Mark Alyn. During the last part of our show, we'll be speaking with brain coach Simon Ravitz. She's the author of a new book, and we will talk to her about brain boosters in about 25 minutes from now. Right now, we go to my neck of the woods in Ventura County, California, and we speak to Natasha Trenev, who is known as the Mother of Probiotics. Natasha, welcome to Late Night Health.
Oh, thank you. I'm looking forward to this show.
What are probiotics? I don't know that many people know what those are, so let's talk about those first of all.
Well, since I introduced the word, let me give you a brief executive summary. Probiotics literally means for health, whereas antibiotics mean for life, whereas antibiotics mean against life. And so probiotics is the use of selected beneficial bacteria to impact that very complex ecology in your gut, which is composed of 100 trillion microbes. And those 100 million microbes really control every state of your health. And so that's why it's so important for everyone to understand how they can improve that most important ecology to their health.
And, of course, the gut is the beginning of all health, they say.
Absolutely. I've said this 40 years ago, and people would want to certify me as certifiable.
Well, it's funny. I remember my grandfather, who would be like 110 now, something like that. In the 60s, he would develop sores in his mouth, and they would become infected. A herpes virus. And he would use yogurt that was, of course, full of, at that time, all yogurt had bacteria in it. They were live bacteria.
Yeah.
And it would solve his problem. And is yogurt, live yogurt, a form of probiotics?
Yes. Okay, let me qualify. Live yogurt has some probiotics in it which diminish rapidly after the product is made and refrigerated. And when we talk about yogurt, let's exclude all of these sugary, fruit-flavored stuff they have in the marketplace, which is really what I call a good excuse for a dessert.
Right.
So my explanation will be about plain yogurt.
And plain yogurt has live cultures in it?
It has live cultures, but let me just tell you that there are federal statutes about yogurt and which microorganisms it has to contain in order to be called yogurt. But it's not very loosely regulated, and no one really knows the content of the bacteria when they're eating this yogurt, the potency or what it really has in it. Most of them, the large, labels are okay, but the smaller the company, nobody really knows what their starter culture is.
And the other thing is that the sugar kind of kills the bacteria.
Well, it doesn't really kill the bacteria. Let me tell you something interesting. The bacteria in yogurt does not like the sugar, so that's why they're allowed to put in all the sugar, because it doesn't really want to ferment it.
Oh.
And that sugar then becomes food for bad bacteria. So you see, you're sort of like shooting yourself in the foot. You got the good bacteria in the yogurt, but you're also giving sugar to feed the undesirable microbes in your gut. So it's like, you're walking on both sides of the fence.
Why should I take a probiotic supplement such as those that are manufactured by you at Natron?
Well, okay, very simple. The environment has changed radically in the last 4 to 5 decades. We now have multiple resistant microbes in our community. When I say resistant, meaning there's such things as Clostridium difficile or MRSA or other bacteria that is not much more prevalent in our community than it was 40 and 50 years ago. So therefore, since nothing is sterile and we breathe, drink, and eat in bacteria on a daily basis, the disturbances can be quite severe, especially since what's happening to children and the fact that mothers are no longer able to transfer the right bacteria to a newborn child, even if it's born vaginally and breastfed. So there's a whole environmental upset that we've had in the last 40 to 50 years, and the fermented foods are no longer enough source of the beneficial bacteria that we need to impact that 100 trillion microbes in our gut.
Are in the last 10 years, maybe a little bit less than that, kombucha has become very popular. A fermented drink. There are live cultures in there, I believe.
Right.
And it's hard to drink for me. I do occasionally imbibe one because it makes me feel like I'm doing something good for my body. I try not to do a lot of the flavored ones because they're too sweet, and then of course there's the vinegar aspect of it from the fermentation, and they clash to me, at least on my tongue. They don't dance, they clash. They dance like I dance. And so people are aware of the benefits of these beneficial bacteria. Right.
Okay. Let me make it easy for the listener and everybody to understand. Kombucha, yogurt, kefir, sauerkraut. All of these are what we call functional foods. What do I mean by functional foods? If you use bacteria to culture it, or in the case of kombucha, it's a yeast, it makes the food or the vitamins much more bioabsorbable by the body. For instance, let me give you an example.
Sure.
If you culture milk with the yogurt bacteria, the availability of folic acid increases 500%.
Oh, my.
Yes. So, yeah, that becomes what we call a functional food. Now, the problem is, as I explained earlier, that, functional food is not enough to impact that microbiome or microbiota that's in our gut and, lines up along the 27 feet of our GI tract and is alongside the 100 million neurons, which is the second brain lining our gut, and about 80% of our immune cells. So that's where that, optimal optimization of that, microflora becomes very important, because that microflora has its own genes, and those genes are actually 3 million in number, and they control 99% of our health outcome, whereas our own genetic makeup only controls about 10% of our, predisposition to health or disease.
One of the things that you mentioned about functional foods, a couple of weeks ago, maybe a month ago, I had a craving for sauerkraut. I love sauerkraut. And I told my wife, buy me organic sauerkraut. She couldn't find it. She bought me an off-brand. And I looked at it, and of course it was made by putting the cabbage not into a culture, but into vinegar.
Yeah, they do that with salt or with vinegar, and then a bacteria grow there, and it's what we call a fermentation process without bacteria.
Exactly, and it doesn't taste as good.
No, it doesn't taste as good. Like in the old country, they used to have these wooden barrels that they would culture with the cabbage.
And pickles. Pickles too.
Exactly. Well, we don't make anything like we did, and this is where the important part comes in. Now, I'm so delighted that everybody now has probiotics on their lips, because in 1982, when I brought the term to the health food industry in America, Canada, Mexico, Europe, Australia, and some. Pardon me?
You brought it to the world.
Yeah. I didn't make up the word, but I really brought the concept and the category to the world. People thought I lost my mind. They said, what the heck is that? The only thing we knew about in the industry was that acidophilus was an adjunct to a vitamin line, and it was usually liquid. And now I'm talking about very sophisticated freeze-dried cultures, single strain, and, with guaranteed potencies, et cetera, et cetera. So while, people were getting great results with our products, the other people started scratching their heads. Well, this is almost impossible to get into this business because it's so expensive, this manufacturing plant. So what happened is that there's only like 3 basic manufacturers in the entire continent of North America. And so people went and started buying these products from a contract manufacturer. And the contract manufacturer just tells everybody, hey, we guarantee the potency only to our door. And they give them a concoction of some microbes that they throw into a capsule or a bottle. And then 90% of the money is spent on selling the product to you. But the fact is that, in 1989, the entire health food industry in the U.S. voted on a probiotic labeling standard established by me. That means every retailer, every manufacturer, every distributor, every educator that was a member of this national organization voted on these labeling standards, and they passed. Then about 3 years later, these same standards were read into the congressional record. That was around 1994, in order to pass the Deshay Amendment. The problem is, the minute the standards passed, everybody had instant amnesia and totally forgot about them because it was bad for business.
Well, what we can do is say that the Natron products are good, and we'll tell people how they can go to your website in a few minutes. Our guest is Natasha Trenev. She is the Mother of Probiotics, and we're talking about that. When I come back with Natasha in just a few moments, we're going to talk about the fact that her family was in the dairy business for over 750 years, and we'll talk about the kinds of products they made and the kinds of products that Natasha makes today. I'm Mark Alyn. This is Late Night Health. Join us at latenighthealth.com. More coming up. Don't go away.